So, welcome to tonight's session, whether we're here with me live or whether you're watching on the replay. So today's session is very loosely titled, and I think I've changed the title about 10 times as I've talked about it in different contexts, but something along the lines of you having your strongest season next year. So in terms of the goal, it's to set you up with a strong year of training and racing or events. You don't have to be racing, but whatever it is you want to be working on for next year. We're going to do that by reviewing your year and trying to collect the learnings from that. We're going to be planning for next year. We're going to be looking at the off season and how you can get the most out of the off season. Oh, sorry. And then I'll have a quick time to go through how I can help you in more detail. And then we'll go into some questions at the end. I imagine that we'll kind of be coming up to about 8 o'clock when we get to the questions section, and then the questions can take as long as you want to go through them for. So in terms of just quick bit of housekeeping and also just making sure you're getting the most out of the session. So the session, as you can probably see, is being recorded. If you've got your camera on, that means you'll appear in the recording. I would love it if you do have your camera on because it just helps me to know that I'm talking to real people rather than talking to myself. But I completely understand if you've got kids running around, if you're having your dinner, whatever else, absolutely fine to have the camera off. If it's all right with you, if you can keep yourself on mute, which I think you all are, that's brilliant. It just means the sound quality is better for everybody. But do be ready to interact in the session. It's up to you. Nobody is going to be forced to. Nobody's going to be forced to talk or to share anything if they don't want to. But if you do, it just makes it a more interactive session. So if you're ready with the chat to be able to type in, if you hate typing, you can just type share, or you can wave your hand like a Zoom way of waving your hand. If you don't know where that is, you go down to the react button at the bottom and click raise your hand, and then I should see that. And then you can just unmute yourself and say something, but don't all unmute at the same time. But if you would rather speak than type, then I can invite you to do that. If we can agree that everything that is shared tonight, we keep confidential between us. Anything I say, you're absolutely welcome to share with whoever, but anything that anybody else shares, if we can keep that just confidential in this space. If you want to type any questions as we go through, if you just put a Q next to it so that I can spot the questions and I know to answer them rather than them just being part of the chat. If it's something very kind of relevant to what we're talking about at that moment, I'll try and answer it at that moment. If it's something more general, we'll save it for the questions at the end. And then my biggest thing for you guys is I would really recommend that you participate. Again, that doesn't mean you have to share out loud with anybody else if you don't want to, but it is a workshop. Workshops are obviously a bit of a funny thing to be running when we're talking about on Zoom and we're all here in our own rooms or whatever. But the more you put into it, the more you'll get out. So some of you will have seen I've sent through a worksheet in advance. If you haven't, you've got an email with it in. Don't worry, though. You absolutely don't have to be filling that in as we go. Some people like to have a worksheet to take away. Some people like to come back and revisit it afterwards. So that's there for you. There's an editor, I can never say the word, editable version that you can type into your computer, or there's a version you can print out. But personally, I'm a big fan of just pen and paper, scribbling on a notepad or whatever. So don't feel that you have to be filling in that worksheet. I just want you to know it's there so you don't have to worry about writing down everything. I will be sharing the recording afterwards. So you'll have the recording. I'll also be sharing the slides. Most of the slides are kind of copied onto the worksheet anyway, but so all of that will be coming through afterwards. If you're watching on replay, I would really encourage you to also be taking part in the session. It's very easy to kind of be on replay and be like, oh yeah, I'll do it later, I'll do it some other time. You won't. We all know we won't. So do it now, take the time to do it. And if you're watching on replay, you can always press pause if you need longer. If you want to go through faster, you can always put the sort of playing it, it's on YouTube, so you can play it at a faster speed when you're waiting for the gaps while I'm waiting for people in the live session to finish, so you can adjust the times to work for you. Okay. So quick introduction. Lots of you know me. I know lots of you. Some of you I'm new to. So I'll just kind of quickly introduce myself. So I did my first triathlon back in 2012. And that experience basically changed my life. I realized the kind of life-changing power of exercise, particularly in terms of mental health, but in terms of my physical health, in terms of pretty much, as I say, most of my life. And I was so impressed by the effect it had on me that I decided to change career and I wanted to become a triathlon coach ultimately. I didn't know how to do that, so I became a personal trainer at first, worked in London gyms, sort of specializing in endurance training and supporting my clients to do races, and then learned how to train as a triathlon coach. And now I'm a level 3 triathlon coach. I'm a level 2 Training Peaks coach. I've set up my own business, Feel Fit with Lucy, where I focus on supporting my clients to meet their goals, whether that's running, triathlon, whatever. I am incredibly passionate about mental health and exercise. So I'm also a qualified mental health and exercise coach. And I'm a qualified life coach because it's very easy to know what we should do or what we want to do, but turning it into action is often a very different thing. So those life coaching skills are about helping you make the change towards whatever your goal is. In terms of my own competing experience, I've competed at age group at various different distances and levels. I've done lots of ultra cycle races, or not lots, but lots of miles, and Audaxes and all that sort of thing. And then most recently, I competed at the Ironman World Championships in Kona last month. I am perimenopausal, and that is a big impact on my training and also, I was going to say on my coaching. What I mean is in terms of working with my clients on that issue, it's something I'm very passionate about, supporting my clients to make sure they've got the right support so that they can carry on training, being active as they go through perimenopause into menopause. I've worked with various different organizations, kind of been an endurance lead for them. So Virgin Active, Run Mummy Run, Women in Tri. I've done various different presentations and sort of inputted into their endurance training. Sorry, I'm just trying to get somebody into the... There we go. I'm very passionate about clubs and supporting local clubs. I've been head coach with 4 different triathlon clubs now and counting. And I'm currently a coach with York Triathlon Club here up in York. And then in terms of working with my clients, I both have my one-to-one clients and I have a membership. And I'll be taking a little bit of time to tell you a bit more about the membership at the end of today for anybody who's interested. But that's a membership for female clients to support them with coaching, to help them get the most out of their training. So over to you guys. I said we were going to get interactive. So really quickly, just pop into the chat. What are your training or racing goals for this year, for the year that's just happened? So doesn't have to be detailed, doesn't have to be a SMART goal or whatever, but what were you working towards? Just so we get a feel of what people were focusing on. And that doesn't have to be racing. It could have been you were trying to get back into training, do your first 5K, whatever. Or maybe quickly pop into the chat what your goals were for this year. And there's going to be a really awkward pause until somebody puts something. So I'm not going to start talking till at least a few people have put something there. So Lydia's coming back from injury and back into running 10Ks again. Helen was to complete 1 sprint try. Helen's done lots more than 1 sprint try. Arlene, hello Arlene. Outlaw half Ironman. Oh, it's coming in too thick and fast. Lots of it. Brilliant. Jax, Aberfeldy middle distance. Heather was aiming towards running her first ultra. Kat was aiming to do 24-minute 5K. Kate raced aquabike for the first time and swam well to swim well at the national champs. Sorry if I've missed anybody out, but thank you. Good typing there. Rachel has done her goal was to do her first Olympic distance triathlon, and she says she's 50. Amazing, brilliant. Okay, so let's look backwards then. Let's look at the season that's happened. First of all, we're going to look at what went well. And often we kind of get a bit of resistance when we start looking at what went well. We kind of want to move on. We want to get to our mind naturally turns to the negatives and looking at what went badly. But it's really important to spend some time on what went well. First of all, to actually celebrate what we've achieved. So often we do something, we move on to the next thing, we move on to the next thing. And we're British, we don't like showing off, even if it's just to ourselves, we don't like to celebrate. But let's take a moment to acknowledge what we have achieved. As I say, we have inbuilt into all of us a negativity bias. It's there to protect us, it's there to keep us alive, to look for risks, to make sure that, to look out for those risks. But it will overwhelm us and we will be far more likely to see what's gone wrong rather than what's gone right. So let's take some time to rebalance and actually see those positives as well. But most importantly, and in terms of today and in terms of what we're going to get out of today, it's going to help you to build future success. If we are staying in a negative place, we're not creative. Whereas when we're in that more positive emotion, we're better at problem solving. We're better at seeing our way through things. When we spend some time looking at those positives, it helps us to build a growth mindset. It strengthens our belief that we can do something, which then becomes a virtuous circle. If we believe we can do something, we try doing it, we go in with that positive mindset, we see the opportunity rather than just seeing the risk. So we create change, we prove to ourselves we can do something. and it activates our dopamine pathway. So dopamine's the hormone that is kind of responsible for helping us to get things done, for repeating actions towards to achieve an action. And dopamine likes seeing that we've been successful and it wants it again. So it lights up those pathways. So it wires in that change, that desire to do more. So let's spend some time focusing on those positives. So on your piece of paper or on your worksheet, whatever you want to do, write down what went well this year in terms of training. And there's no set definition of what I mean by training. That's whatever it means to you. So just take a few moments to just brainstorm. There's no proper right, wrong answers. You're not going to have to share any of this. Just brainstorm on everything that went well this year in terms of training. And then you can carry on that list. But I also want you to think about what went well this year in terms of how you look after your body and your mind to support your training. So that's things like nutrition, that's things like prioritizing recovery, that's things like doing strength and conditioning to support your body to absorb that training. Could be working on your mindset. So trying to overcome a fear of failure, trying to overcome a fear of racing, trying to overcome negative mindset that's holding you back. So anything you've done, add that onto that brainstorm. Think outside the box. Try and fill that page with all the positives. Like I say, partly because we want to celebrate them, but partly because we want to wake up that side of the brain, build those positive pathways. Okay, so I'm going by the body language of the people I can see on screen. Shout if you need more time, but the people who I can see look like they're shuffling, ready to move on. So, in terms of racing and events or the kind of output of that training, whatever that looks like for you, it doesn't have to be a race as such. What went well this year in terms of racing or events? And you may have already put some of those in there, but this is the more the output focus that we're looking here. And try not just to focus on things like time over the line, but think about how it went. Did you enjoy it? Did you cross the line thinking, yep, that's how I wanted that to go? And maybe a shorter answer or shorter part of the question, but what went well this year? And you may have already put this down, but what went well this year in terms of planning for that race day or that event day? So things like, had you got a plan for your nutrition? Had you got a plan for your pacing, for your mindset, for the kit that you plan to use? You may not have needed a plan for those things, but where they were relevant, and some of you were doing long races or races for the first time. So how well had you planned how race day was going to go? Okay. So now I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms, if that's all right. If everybody, what I'll do is pop you into the breakout rooms. If everybody doesn't go into a breakout room because they're not comfortable unmuting, sharing, whatever, then I'll cancel the breakout rooms and call you back in. So I know lots of people are probably in the middle of dinner. Rather than trying to get you all to feedback now, which will take forever, I'll pop you into the breakout rooms. But if it looks like it's clearly not going to work, then I'll just call you back in and we'll have a discussion for anybody who wants to share in a group space. But otherwise, if you go into your group, your breakout rooms, there'll be 3 to 4 of you in each room. And if you just quickly introduce yourself to each other and then share what you did to make those successes happen. So anything that you've just written down on that piece of paper, share one thing, or you can share 2 if you've got more time, but what did you do to make those successes happen? So recognizing that success doesn't just happen, you have to take some conscious decisions to make that happen. Okay. Hello, welcome back, everybody. If you just stick yourselves back on mute, if that's all right. So hopefully you had some good successes to share with each other and hopefully did a little bit of celebrating for each other there. So now let's move on to what we could improve. And often this is the bit where we're kind of more comfortable. You probably found when you were doing the brainstorming of what went well, that little negative things, what could you have done better, kept on coming up. Often we note the things we could have done better, but we don't actually then address them. So we beat ourselves up, we criticize ourselves because of all the things we think we could have done better, but we don't actually then take the time to say, okay, so what can I do about that? So that's what we're hopefully going to get to today. So same questions as last time, but looking at whether there's things we could improve or change. So in terms of your training, first of all, is there anything that you would have liked to have improved or changed in your training in this year that's just sort of coming to an end now in terms of your training? And again, just write it down, brainstorm, try and get as much down as you can. So get as much onto that piece of paper of anything you'd like to have improved or changed in terms of your training. And then again, same question. What about in terms of how you look after your body and your mind to support your training? So those same ideas, nutrition, recovery, strength and conditioning, mindset, but you can absolutely add other things as well. Are there things that you would have liked to have done better, to have improved, to have done differently this year in terms of how you look after your body and your mind to support your training? And then on to racing. Is there anything you would have liked to have improved or changed in terms of your racing? And again, that's a broad term, events, outputs of the training, whatever you want to look at that as. It could be your park run time, it could be a sportif, it could have been a club session or something. It doesn't have to be a race as such, but where the training kind of leads up to, the output of the training. Is there stuff that you would have liked to have improved or changed? And within that racing, think about the planning side as well. If there's things you would have liked to have improved or changed, are there things that you could have, if you'd been planning and testing your training plan, testing your race plan, could that have helped? So was it not a problem of execution as much as just you hadn't had the chance to have planned or test that plan in advance? And it's often the planning where I'll see things getting off course. So often we've done all the training, but we haven't, for example, trained our stomach or our mindset. And so that's what actually lets us down on race day. or we focus on the time we want to get. We know that we want the time across the finish line, but we haven't tested that pacing enough in advance to know if that's a realistic pace to be aiming for. I know what you mean, Neil. Neil's saying because he's a coach that he spends all his time talking to his clients about what they need to be doing or suggesting what they should do and not enough time writing a plan for himself. Maybe we need to write each other's plans, Neil. um, okay. So looking at that list of all the things that you would have liked to have done differently, now draw two big circles on your paper and pop in for the big, you don't have to put everything in there, but for the biggest things that are on your list of things you wish you'd done differently, what was in your control and what was out of your control? And you might find it hard to answer. So you're allowed to start off with a little parking space of not quite sure, but I would strongly advise that you try and get things out of that parking space. So really thinking clearly what was in your control and what was out of your control. And some people will do this exercise and find it's actually quite a relief because they're beating themselves up about things that actually they've got no control over. And as soon as we start to realize that those things we can't make a difference on, we can stop worrying about them. We can stop beating ourselves up. We can stop feeling guilty. We can stop criticizing ourselves because there's just nothing that we can do about them. Conversely, sometimes we think things are out of our control, and actually there is a lot we can do about it. So we might say, well, I couldn't hit my race goals that I wanted to because I had to work late too often. And that can be absolutely true. And it's out of your control whether your boss asks you to work late, but maybe there's things that you can do that are in your control about thinking how you schedule your training to allow for the fact that your boss is always asking you to work late, or thinking about having different race goals if that's what happens all the time. So be truthful to yourself about what is in your control and what is out of your control. And as I say, try and move things out of that circle in the middle. And then once you've got your things into those two different circles, start to think, and you're probably already there, but what could you do to change them next time? So the things that were in your control, what could you do to try and make sure that the outcome is as you want it to be? So we're looking at the things that didn't go as planned this year. Of the things that you could control, how could you change it so you get the outcome that you want? And just leave behind everything that's in that other circle. So hopefully that's kind of reduced the mental load of the things that you're sort of worrying about or thinking, oh, I wish I could have done that differently. Hopefully you've got a smaller list now, but from that smaller list, what can you do to try and get the outcome that you want? Okay. You can obviously keep on scribbling onto all those different bits of paper and just note down anything that's a question for yourself or a question for me as you go. So let's move into the learnings now. So first of all, how have you dealt with challenges that have come up? So first of all, just for yourself, decide what was your biggest challenge. That could be very directly related to your training and racing. It could be something that happened in your life, but that therefore overspills into your training and racing. So what was the biggest challenge that you faced this year? And what good came of it? And what did you learn from it? So our challenges and how we deal with them can be one of our greatest sources of development and of learning and of progress. Even the worst challenges can offer us some really powerful learning opportunities, but only if we take the time and the effort, I guess, to learn from them. So in terms of that biggest challenge, maybe you're already aware of what good came of it. Maybe you're already aware of the learnings, or maybe you're like, no, it was just awful. Take some time now to think what you can think of. What have you learned from it? What positive can you take from it? And then on to what have you learned today about yourself or about your training that you didn't know before or you hadn't seen before, or maybe you're aware of it, but you hadn't kind of really noted it as a key issue. So from all the stuff you've written down today, what have you learnt that you either didn't know before or you weren't kind of giving recognition to before? And based on that learning, what message would you like to have given yourself at the start of this season or a point that things got tough during the year? If you could go back in time and give yourself a message that would help you get through it better, get more from it, whatever, what message would you like to have given yourself? And maybe most importantly, how will you remind yourself of that message next year? If similar circumstances are coming up, how can you help yourself take on board that learning, that message, whatever it is, as you go into next year, or if those same circumstances come up again? So you can share into the chat now, and Neil's already shared. I will read it out for you in a sec. So if you're comfortable to, and again, no pressure, but if you're comfortable to share in the chat, taking into account everything you've considered so far today, what are your top one or two learnings? And that can be something that's new to you today. It can be something you already knew, but what are the kind of most important things that you're taking forwards into your planning, your thoughts for next year? So Neil said, there's times when you need an arm around your shoulder and there's times when you need a kick up the backside. This year, I've had too much of the former, feeling sorry for myself, but I needed more of the latter. And yeah, you can decide that for yourself, Neil. I would say that we can always do with compassion. Compassion for ourselves doesn't have to mean feeling sorry for ourselves. If we constantly critique ourselves, we're not going to get any further. So having that compassion, but then compassion with curiosity, that compassion, okay, this is everything feels a bit crap, but what can we do about it? So it doesn't have to be the kick up the backside. This is my opinion. Obviously, you can have your own opinion, but it doesn't have to be the kick up the backside, but maybe just that gentle questioning of, okay, and so where do we go from here? Heather said, I think Neil is my twin, and you're both on my screen. You're both next to each other. And there was a moment when you actually looked at each other just as he was saying that. But yeah, Heather, I think also you can do with some compassion as well. Lydia has said not to try and do everything all in one go. Brilliant. Helen, take responsibility for the things in my control. Very good. I'll let anybody else type in anything else that they want to. So do keep sharing, but I will go on to the next stage. So now taking into account everything you've thought about, taking into account those learnings, taking into account that we get more from ourselves when we work with ourselves rather than when we're just, as Neil would say, giving the kick up the backside. Let's look at planning for next year. So taking into account everything you've considered so far tonight, what are your draft goals for 2026? Taking on board those learnings of how you could have done things differently this year, what you wanted to focus on, whatever. What are your draft goals for 2026? And I suggest, absolutely up to you, but you can sort of give yourself just put a line down the page or something, have a little parking space for stuff that you know you want to work on, but you're not quite sure where it fits. So, so you don't lose those thoughts, but so you're not trying to cram everything into those draft goals. So what are your draft goals for 2026? And what are the top 3 to 5, absolutely up to you how many, but I'd suggest that kind of number of inputs you want to focus on to achieve those goals. So this is where you consider things like skills, like building habits, like lifestyle, like any external support that you might need, like working on your mindset, like planning for races. What are the things that you need to consider that are going to help you to achieve those goals that you've written down? And then let's have a sense check of those goals. Are they realistic? Are they challenging enough? So often we'll put down 20 things and 20 things that just aren't realistic. So often we put on too much, but then often we're not challenging ourselves enough, often at the same time. So maybe we can have a few less goals, but achieve more in there rather than trying to do everything and feel like we just can't kind of get any of it done. So have a sense check of whether they're realistic. Are they challenging enough? Particularly consider what's going on in the rest of your life. So don't plan to do a marathon the month after you're getting married or your kids have got their A levels or, whatever it is. And there's things we don't know that are happening in the rest of life, but based on experience, we know that they do keep on happening. So consider the rest of life and how that's going to impact on things. And then if you've got those goals and those inputs and you've given them a bit of sense check, crossed a few things out, added a few things in, whatever, what are your next steps? So how do you turn that plan into reality? What do you still need to do? At the moment, it's probably a draft plan. What do you need to add in? And when do you want to do that by? Is there external information you need that's going to help you to kind of finish it off? Maybe you're relying on club sessions to do some of the training, but you're not quite sure what the club's going to be offering you. So checking in on that. Maybe you want to do a marathon, but you don't know when it is. So you need to do some research there. Or maybe you know what marathon you're doing. Do you know what date you need to start actually kind of building up towards it? So how long would a typical training plan last towards that goal? When do you need to start by? So putting some milestones in there so that all your great ideas and energy and planning right now doesn't just sit in that notebook there, but you know what your next steps are for turning it into reality. And once you've started to build up that list of the milestones, how are you going to remind yourself of that? So again, so it doesn't sit in that notebook, but yep, I've said that on this date, or maybe you don't know what the date is yet, but you need to remind yourself, you need to confirm what that date is. But on this date, I need to have confirmed my marathon by. On this date, I need to start training for my marathon, whatever it is. So how are you going to make sure that that plan and those dates don't just sit in your notebook, but start to turn into reality? Maybe that's asking somebody else to hold you to account. Maybe that's putting some reminders into your phone, into your diary, whatever it is. Those of you who are in my membership from January will be having a quarterly check-in where you can say what your goals are, what you're planning to do, and then quarterly we'll be checking in on that. So that's one way that you can kind of add in that accountability in there. Everybody else, you might want to think, is there somebody else that you can work with to hold yourself accountable? Or like I say, is it a digital thing in your diary, whatever? That's just a slide that was meant to have come up on the previous slide. But when we're looking at whether our goals are realistic, so often I'll work with women who are obsessed with having a sub-4 marathon time. And this is just an example to show you only 10 to 20% of women get a sub-4 marathon. Here's your average finish times for the world's major marathons. And it's just a reminder that we often give ourselves these goals and targets, and we pluck this number because it's a nice round sounding number and because we've heard people talk about this number with no real evidence that it's a realistic target for ourselves. So absolutely set yourself those challenging, those stretch goals, but be fair to yourself in terms of the numbers that you're plucking out, or, you know, why do you have those numbers and why are they so important to you? Are they fair to you? So again, an invitation to share in the chat. What are you most excited about in terms of your goals or your inputs for next season? And or what do you think you'll find most challenging in terms of those goals or inputs for next season? And after this, we're going to move on to my top tips for the off season. So if you've got any questions on the sort of process side of what we've done so far, I've got the questions people submitted in advance and I'll answer them at the end, and any other more general. But if there's anything specifically you want to ask about the kind of 2025 review process, you can pop that into the chat as well. So what are you most excited about in terms of goals or inputs for next year? What do you think you'll find most challenging in terms of meeting those goals or inputs? Or any questions so far? I'm not seeing anything coming up, which I hope means that you're not all completely dispirited and not excited at all. Here we go. So Heather is excited to get started again with a plan. And the biggest challenge is the consistency of sticking to it. And hopefully we'll cover a bit of that in what I'm about to talk about now. Helen's most excited about winter training, and the biggest concern is fitting it around work and the fact that she needs to retire. Kate, brilliant. Most exciting is seeing what is possible. I love that. Oh, and she said it 3 times, so it must be very exciting. Brilliant. I'll keep going, but do feel free to keep popping into the chat with anything in there. And I haven't seen any questions coming up, so I will move on. Rachel is really looking forward to an organized plan of action, and challenges would be work-life balance. And that is always the challenge, but recognizing it and making sure we set our goals accordingly, set our planning accordingly, rather than sort of setting ourselves up for failure by trying to take on too much and believing we can do more than what is possible. Neil's goal for 2026 is to get back to consistent training and progression. Then we take it from there. I love it. And that is absolutely where we need to start with. And Lydia is very excited to work towards her first try with a plan, which I'm very excited about as well. Carry on popping them in, but I will keep moving on. So off-season tips. So 5 top tips for getting the most out of the off-season. Number 1, rest and recharge. So many people, when I work with them, we get to the, supposing they had an October marathon or something, and the first thing they say is, I don't want to lose my race fitness. You cannot maintain your race fitness without following a race training plan, which most of us don't want to be doing a 30K run every weekend or whatever. So be willing and be comfortable with losing some of your fitness. Don't try and maintain that level of race training all the way through, because you will get burnt out mentally and physically. So take some time to rest and recharge. Take some time to invest in the things that you maybe don't have so much time for if you have got a really busy race schedule, or just, summer tends to be a busier time anyway. Take some time to refine that motivation if you need to. But don't take too long, because so often people will take a month off and then that month turns into 6 weeks, turns into 8 weeks, and then, oh, it's Christmas soon, so there's no point in starting now. There's always a point in just getting the ball rolling. So don't wait until January to restart. But do take some time, and over the off season in general, just take some time to recharge those batteries. Start thinking about building your base fitness for next year. So In order to add in the race intensity or the race volume that we're looking at for next year, and you've got all got a whole range of different goals there. But in order to do that, we need that base training. We need that if you think about building a house, you need the foundations before you can start putting the walls and everything in there. So we need that base. And we talk a lot about that being zone 2 training. And certainly for running, depending on your goals, I'm a big fan of doing a majority of your training as easy training, particularly running because it's hard on our body. We need to build up that resilience. We need to build up the resilience in the ligaments, the bones, the tendons, all the places that as runners, I'm sure you know, you tend to get injured. If we do easy running and just slowly build that up, we're building up that resilience, which gives us that, hopefully, some sort of less chance of getting injured next year. But for things like cycling, you're not going to go out and do hours and hours on your bike because it's cold and it's wet and it's horrible. So I'm a big fan of doing more structured intervals, something, not really high intensity, but something sort of in your sort of sweet spot zones or whatever, something that's going to build up that fitness, but making the most out of a shorter interval of time rather than having to do those big long rides, because it's just not practical living in England or in Europe at this time of year. But I'd say almost beyond the base training, the most important thing is consistency. The single thing that will make the biggest outcome to your performance, whether that's being fitter, faster, just finding everything easier and therefore enjoying it more, is consistency. So start small or start where you're at and build up, but build up that consistency of habit rather than having a week where you do loads and then you do nothing the next week. And it's kind of this flip-flop. Just get that consistency in there that builds those habits, that makes everything easier, and it builds that just base of training. And then think about what you can do to build what I call your enabling environment. So the lifestyle and habits that are going to underpin your future training, as well as your long-term health. Because for me, it's never just about, time over the finish line. It's about making sure we're building stronger, happier, healthier bodies over the long run. So things like working on your nutrition, and I've just put in brackets for those of you who are in the membership. These are all things you've got loads more detail about. There's a masterclass on each of these issues in the membership. But so working on nutrition as an example, setting yourself a daily protein target. And maybe that's not to meet 7 days a week, but maybe you start off trying to meet it 3 days a week, or you start trying to meet, where you're at, add 20 grams to that, or whatever it is. So there's most of you who know me will know that I'm very keen on making sure we're getting enough protein in. So working towards getting whatever your daily protein target is. Maybe it's just about building, sorry, not just, there should not be a just in that sentence. Maybe it's about building regular meal prep habits. So making sure that a few times a week you are doing that, thinking about the meals you're going to eat that week and doing that prep around it. Maybe it's working on your mindset, working on fears around race day, working on breaking down limiting beliefs. Maybe it's making sure you prioritize recovery, so setting yourself some sleep goals or making sure you're planning in a rest day or a rest week. Maybe it's about making sure you're getting in strength and conditioning. We should all be doing strength-based activities at least twice a week, maybe for women at least 3 times a week. If you're not there yet, aim for once a week. And it doesn't have to be a big session. Start with where you're at and build up. Maybe it's about working with your cycle. If you're a woman with a cycle, a menstrual cycle, working with your cycle. So maybe it's about tracking your cycle for 3 months, trying to spot some patterns, which you can then start to work around in your training. And then all of that enabling environment, we make so much easier if we can build in habits. So if we're running on willpower, if we're using willpower to get things done, it is exhausting and it lasts for a week or so or however long, and then we just give up on it. So we want to move from trying to force things through with willpower to making it easy on ourselves through building habits. Again, I've got whole sort of sessions on building habits. I'm not going to go through it all in detail now, but as a quick summary, first of all, decide your priorities. Just set one goal at a time. Don't try and take on everything that we talk about today and try and make it all happen from tomorrow or from Monday next week. Work on one thing at a time. Wait until it becomes a habit. Wait until it becomes easy to get it done, and then add in the next thing. Plan when you're going to do the thing. So supposing you want to start running at least once a week. Plan when you're going to do it. Plan your diary, whether it's on a Sunday evening, a Monday morning, whatever, but plan when you're going to do it and try and have a consistent trigger, something that tells you this is when you're going to do it. So if it's first thing in the morning, if it's when you get home from work, but something that means I know this is the time I'm going to do it, because then you're just getting rid of the decisions, trying to work out when you're trying to do it. And you've got that constant reminder. So it just makes it so much easier to build the habit. If you're struggling to build habits, then try and think, what's the barrier? What's stopping it? What's in your mind that's stopping you from wanting to do it? And what can you do to change that? Try adding in a reward. Try making it easier or smaller. Start at the lowest hanging fruit. We always go for the big thing and we always say, oh no, I'm an all or nothing person. Let's just go for consistency, because all is great, but nothing isn't getting us any closer towards our goal. So try and think about what's the smallest, easiest thing we can do to get ourselves moving, to start working towards that habit. And try and reduce decisions. So rather than having to think about everything every time, cut down the number of decisions. It'll make it just so much easier mentally. Fourth top tip for the off season is to use it to work on our biggest, or the areas we most want to focus on in terms of skills and weaknesses. So that could be in terms of swim technique, that could be in terms of bike skills, that could be in terms of run form, it could be in terms of addressing the injuries that keep on reoccurring. Yeah, ignore the note on the big build there. So think about setting yourself a goal for your priority areas. I'm going to quickly skim through some sort of ideas of things to be working on, but they're obviously very dependent on you. So set yourself a goal of the things you want to focus on over the off season. So for example, in swimming, my strong recommendation is to be focusing on technique over the winter. That doesn't mean we lose our focus on the swimming side of it and the pace and the structure there, but we focus on our technique, because when you've got a race coming up, it's very hard to kind of go, I'm going to take a step backwards to work on these things, because you're just worried about getting it done in time. You've got some time now. So take that step backwards potentially to learn to go forwards by working on your technique. Think about with your goals, whether you want them to be input goals. So things like, I want to swim once every week, or whether it's an output, you want to take 1 second off your critical swim speed, off your 400-meter time, whatever it is. Think about how you want to track it, so you build in that accountability to yourself. In terms of cycling, as I said earlier, I'm a big fan of essentially indoor cycling at this time of year, doing structured intervals, so you're getting your most time out, you get most impact out of the time that you spend. Remembering, even on the turbo, even indoors, we can still be working on technique things. We can work on our pedal stroke. We can work on trying to hold constant power. We can work on our cadence. We can work on our aero position. We can work on our mindset. And that's all time neutral. If you're already doing that session on the bike, you're getting that extra benefit if you're doing that there. You can obviously be adding in the outdoors as well. I'm not anti-outdoors in any way whatsoever, but do make sure that you're safe. And maybe if you have the opportunity to ride off-road, then that's, potentially safer, but great time for building the skills and putting some fun into the training. In terms of your goals, it might just be that you want to make sure you carry on riding outdoors once a month. Don't try and think you're going to do it every weekend if that's not what you normally do, but maybe you want to keep that consistency so it's not so hard to get back outdoors as we sort of move into the season next year. Or maybe it's something much more output, trying to raise your fitness on the bike in terms of something you can measure, whether that's your functional threshold power, whether that's taking your cadence up, whatever. So finding something that you can hold yourself to account on that you want to focus on over the off season. In terms of running, if you've got a big race coming up, don't try and change your technique just before a race. So if you've got a marathon or a half marathon coming up in the new year, fine to be working on technique now, but don't be doing it, and don't start doing it just in the few weeks before, because you'll change the muscles you're using. You're more likely then to get injured. So consider easy running. I'm a big fan of run walk. And again, I would not be adding in speed work until you've built a sufficient base. Think about making sure you're warming up, thinking about adding in technique. I've got, if anybody's interested, I do weekly strength and conditioning sessions, Club Feel Fit, where we're looking at running at the moment. So looking at run technique. I also have free mobility warm-up videos. I'll put some links to that when I send around the recording. And again, set some goals that work for you. And then finally, all of the things we're talking about, build it into a training plan. So without a plan, it's very hard to get to where you want to get to. Whereas a plan, you know where you want to get to, and you've got a plan to get there. And it builds in that accountability. You know what you're planning to do each week or each day. So you've got that accountability to yourself. That plan can just be simply a weekly plan. Every Tuesday, I run. Every Wednesday, I go to the club swim session. Every Thursday, I do a turbo session, whatever it is. But bear in mind, if you do the same thing every week, you're not going to build your fitness. You're not going to get fitter. You're not going to get faster. You're just going to maintain, which might be fine if that's what you want. But if you're trying to build up the distance or if you want to get faster, then you need some progression in your plan. You need to be changing what you do each week so that you're building in that progression. So particularly if you've got a race or an event, know when that is and work backwards from that to make sure you've built up the distance in time for that. In terms of that plan, it can be a plan that you write yourself. It can be going to local club sessions. You can get an off-the-shelf plan and just make sure you've adapted it to make it work for you. You've obviously got all your AI plans now, which I think can be really, really useful, but make sure you're working with that AI. And if you don't do a session, tell it why, help it learn, help it understand you so that it can support you the best. And then think, is what you need a plan? Or I would strongly recommend everybody needs a plan, but where the problems are coming up, is it a plan or is it coaching? Is it working on how you do it rather than what you're doing that you need support on? And is there, where could you go for that? Does your club have that sort of support? Something I can help you with, I'll talk to you quickly in a sec about, but seeing where you can get that support. So taking into account everything you've considered tonight, what's your priority for the off season, or what's your priorities for the off season? Are they realistic? And are they building you towards the inputs that you've identified for 2026? So thinking about everything we've talked about, thinking about what you could be working on in the off season. Have you got a realistic plan of what you want to do? And are they helping to build you towards the inputs that you've identified for that 2026 plan? And I'll just pop up, oh, and what are the milestones? So same question as before, when do you need to do things by? I'll pop up a reminder of those 5 top tips if you want to think about building any of that into your plan. So we'll come on to questions in a sec. So if you've got questions, start thinking about those questions now. I'm going to quickly run through for anybody who is interested in some support to help them towards the plan that they have been drafting tonight. Quickly run you through my membership and how that works. So the membership, it is just for females. So sorry for the men either watching live or on replay. If you know anybody else who'd be interested, please do send on details to them. It's for female runners and triathletes who want to get more from their training as well as building their health and their happiness. I set it up at the beginning of this year because I'm really passionate about making sure that coaching is accessible and affordable for everyone. So I do a lot of one-to-one coaching, but that's not something that works for everybody, both in terms of the money side of things, but also the time that it can involve putting in. So I want to help the people that I'm working with build up their knowledge, but also, you know, we can have knowledge, we can know what we're meant to do, but it's about learning how to apply that towards our goals. So in terms of the membership, it's £25 a month. And for that, you get a masterclass every month. So the masterclasses so far, we've covered a lot of the things we've talked about today: nutrition, mindset, working with your body as a woman, dealing with stress, how to create change. The one that we've got coming up this week is on how to have more energy. So key subjects which help you get the most from your training or help you build your health and your happiness. There's one-to-one coaching slots each month where you can bring any issues. If you're having issues creating the change that you want to create, or maybe you've written your own plan, but you want some help sort of sense checking it. There's a monthly Q&A where you can bring any questions you've got about anything you want. And then there's a recap session where we look at the previous month's masterclass, and just that's a chance for you to bring any issues that you've had trying to implement whatever we've talked about in the masterclass. You get my on-demand Club Feel Fit, so those strength and conditioning sessions, a new session every week. You get the Mobility Monday videos every week. You get my signature Feel Fit Foundations course, which is kind of the key foundations I would say we need to take into account to build our training and our fitness. You get my race ready resources, so all the things to help you plan towards your racing. And everything that I've done so far is all saved in the library, so you can always access the latest session if you've missed it that month, but all the previous sessions as well. That's just a quick example of what it looks like in there. So you get a masterclass, you'll get the full kind of presentation or masterclass from me, but you get the slides, you get maybe a listening list with some things like podcasts to listen to. You get worksheets like the ones I've sent you for this session today to help you get the most out of the session. In terms of training plans, it doesn't include training plans as such, because I'm very passionate about making sure people have individualized, personalized training plans. I've worked with enough people to know that off the shelf often just doesn't work. That said, I have a few off the shelf half marathon and marathon plans because that's a lot more standard. Those are included for free in the membership. There's also off-season technique and fitness plans for on the turbo. We'll be in December launching swim plans to work on your technique. So things that you can be working on over the off-season to build up that technique and fitness. There's a full workshop on writing your own plan. So I want to support you to write your own plan or to work, as I say, with an AI or something to get that plan to work for you. And then again, you're getting that monthly support through the masterclasses and the one-to-one coaching. So these are just a few quotes from people who have, feeding back on how they've benefited from the resources in the membership. So Vic saying she's learned so much, even though she's been running for 30 years, and that I give you all the tools that you need to achieve your goals. This person saying that the mindset section has been invaluable to them and they've transformed their life significantly in just a few weeks. This person who just joined up last month saying it's absolutely amazing value and there's such a lot in there in terms of resources, videos and information. The coaching, the masterclasses are especially useful. And Katie, who as a result of the nutrition masterclass changed her diet quite significantly. And she said that within a month, she noticed a huge difference. She can't believe how much it's changed her mental and physical well-being. She hasn't been ill since she started doing it and she can't recommend it enough. So that's just a few kind of quotes or testimonies from people who have felt that they've really benefited from the resources in there. Now, as I said, it's £25 a month, but if you sign up now, there's a special offer. So just £5 for the next month. So if you want to take advantage of that, if you flash your phone up at that QR code, that'll take you through to the page where you sign up, or there's the URL, easy to type in, web link there, or the page which you could download the worksheet on that I sent out to you earlier. Give me 5 minutes after the end of this session and I will add on those details on there as well. So if you go to that page on my website, it's the membership page on my website, and sign up using the code season5, you will get the first month for just £5 if you do that by this Sunday. If you sign up tonight, you'll also get a free one-to-one coaching call with me. And if you sign up by this Friday, then you'll be able to join us for our masterclass that we're doing at midday on how to have more energy. If you sign up after that, don't worry, you'll get that. That's all in the library for you to access when you want. So sign up tonight to get the free coaching call. If, as I say, you can use that QR code, or if you go to the link that I sent you before with the worksheet to download on there, you'll get the information on there if you give me 5 minutes just to upload it after this session. If you're worried you won't have time to get the most out of it, my job when I'm working with you is to get the most out of your time. So if you've not got time to follow everything in here, well, what as I say, my job is to make sure you're getting the most out of your time. So making sure you're getting quality training rather than wasting your time doing training that maybe isn't giving you the best benefits. Work with you on your mindset so you're not procrastinating, so you have more time because you're not wasting time procrastinating or trying to do everything perfectly when good enough is good enough, or making sure you're working on your fueling so you're getting the most from your training. If you're worried that you can't make the call times, they alternate and everything's recorded, and you can, of course, cancel at any time. If you're not interested in the membership, I also have, I try and put resources that can support you in your training out on social media and by email and on my blog. So you can always find those on there as well. And I'll put more details of those when I send out the recording. Okay, so on to the questions. So first question, and if you type in any questions that you've got, type them into the chat now, and I will do my best to answer them, but I'll start off with the ones I received in advance. So first question, with time so limited during the festive season and with work and small children, which discipline should I focus on over the winter? Should it be swim, bike, run, or strength? And should I focus on my strongest discipline or my weakest discipline? First of all, for those of you with kids, Women in Tri produced a great resource fairly recently on juggling kids and training, and sort of lots of tips from within their community about how to get the most from your time. Things like, running to school, doing a training session while your kids are at their training sessions or whatever. So that's a great resource there. In terms of the festive season, I'd say, what's your main goal? Is it to be building your fitness? Is it just to be starting to build some consistency? Or is it just to have a moment to yourself among the chaos of Christmas and family and everything that's going on? Often we'll kind of say, oh, I want to do all of this, and put more pressure on ourselves when it's already a really pressurized time. And then we do it for a week and then we fail, in inverted commas, and then we feel worse. So maybe it's about trying to do the easiest session. And for most of us, that is the strongest discipline, so that we get it done. So that we have that moment to ourselves where we're doing our training, where we're enjoying our training, where we feel like we're achieving something, rather than trying to put on loads of pressure to be doing our weakest discipline when everything feels hard anyway, because Christmas is a hard time for most of us. Maybe it's just about taking the time to plan when you're going to start working on the stuff that is harder, but you're not doing it over Christmas. So I don't know your circumstances. I don't know all the specifics. But I would just say, don't try and put too much pressure on yourself at a time which is already going to be hard. But make that plan for when you're going to start working on things. Hopefully January, not too many bugs going around, and you can get back into training, and then you can start building things up. Next question was, how do you manage post-race depression and anticlimax? I tried to focus on the results against the plan and consider it as a building block to improvement. So first of all, I'd say, in terms of that anticlimax, did you take the time to celebrate? Did you take that time to recognize what you've done, or did you try and move straight on? If the anticlimax is because you've not met your goals, were they realistic, or had you been honest with yourself about whether they were important to you? So often I work with clients who say, oh, my time's not important to me. And actually it is. We just don't like to say it out loud. And I should say, the person who I'm saying this to, I'm not saying all this specifically to you. This is just answering the question generally. But yeah, have you been honest with yourself about what those goals were? Is that why you feel sort of disappointed? Or is it something else? Why is it an anticlimax? Ask yourself, what were you expecting? Often we're looking for something from racing that we don't get. Maybe we're looking for recognition from others. Maybe we're looking for that approval or whatever. So maybe it's about working on us being proud of ourselves, us giving ourselves that acceptance and that recognition. But yeah, generally, I would try and work out why you're feeling an anticlimax. Or is it just the dopamine that you get of that, taking part in a race, achieving something, there's all the excitement of the race and everything. Often our dopamine comes in higher in anticipation of the event rather than the actual event. So I'd say in that context, we want to stop chasing the dopamine, stop chasing that idea of the finish line, and instead focus on enjoying the process and enjoying the journey. So yes, what you said about focusing on the results against the plan and a building block to improvement, but focusing on really putting that time into enjoying the process, so that the process is as much part of it as that actual end result. I'm going to leave that one, but just to focus more on the sort of racing side of things. But I would say to the person who asked that, and they are on this call, I think you know the answer, and I think it involves protein and fueling. But we can talk more about that on another call. So then, last question I got in advance. How do you psychologically prepare for a big goal event? The fear of a DNF is making me question whether I want to even enter in the first place. And I love this question. First of all, I would ask yourself, and I think it's relevant to everybody. First of all, ask yourself what you're scared of and write it down. Don't just ask yourself and answer it in your head, because you will self-censor. You'll either just kind of scroll through it really quickly, or you'll go, well, that's silly, and ignore it. Make sure you do a brainstorm, write down everything that you are scared of. Don't self-censor, get it down there. And then go through that list and ask, of the things that are on there, how many are realistic? It doesn't matter if they're overblown and silly. Don't laugh at yourself. That's, that's that natural caring instinct, that's looking out for danger. But make sure that you're not letting those things take on more magnitude than they need. So are they realistic? Does the consequence justify the level of fear that you're feeling? And then go back to that circles of control exercise. What is in your control? And what can you therefore make a plan to deal with? And what is out of your control and it's just not worth worrying about? And then have some tools to reduce stress, things like working on breathing, long, slow, relaxed breaths out to calm yourself down whenever you start feeling yourself getting nervous, when you think about the event on race day, having those breathing practices to come back to help yourself relax. So those are just a few top tips. Again, it's something we work about on a lot in the membership. Has anybody else got any other questions? And you can unmute and ask a question if that's easier rather than typing. I'll give it a minute. Any questions on anything in terms of the process of developing the plan, in terms of your goals, in terms of anything to do with race outcomes? I'll start wrapping up, and it's always when I start wrapping up that all the questions start coming in. But I will start wrapping up. So thank you very much for joining. If you have got any questions on anything, you've got my details now, so you can drop me an email or whatever to ask if questions come to you afterwards. If you're interested in the membership, do give me a shout or follow that link through to sign up. If you've got questions about it, again, do give me a shout. I will leave it there. Was it helpful? Have you got somewhere with writing a plan towards next year? Do you start to feel that you've got an idea of how you're going to get the most from the off season, how you're going to move forwards into next year? I've got some hearts. I've got some thumbs up. So brilliant. Brilliant. Keep me posted. Let me know those things that you've written down. Let me know when they happen next year, how they go. I would love to hear. Best of luck with it all. And yeah, I hope to speak to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Good to see you. And yeah, have a good year of racing next year and the off season. See ya. Bye.